Jehovah Corja, Banachti, Imulk, Jeev Galer, welcome everybody, and Imulk blessings for you in the Northern Hemisphere and Lunasa blessings to you in the Southern Hemisphere. Eimear Burke here. Welcome to another Fireside Chat. So just let me see where you're from. Hi from Washington, Suffolk, UK, West Cornwall. Lovely to see you. Oh, you missed me. Thank you very much. That's really sweet. Hi, this is Pat from Ulster and Celine from the Netherlands. Just lovely to see you. Oh, Crouch End. That's great. New York. Wonderful. Edinburgh. Lovely. Lovely to see you all again. Southampton. Northern Wisconsin. What's the weather like where you are? Here it's from France. Hi, Natasha. Here in Ireland, it was 11 degrees. That's centigrade today. And that's not such a good thing, because when the weather is bad at this time of year, it means the Cailleach is asleep. And that is a good portent of good weather to come. But if it's mild at this time, it means she's out collecting firewood, because there's going to be bad weather ahead. So it'll be interesting to see how your weather is doing. Prince Edward Island, Romania. Oh, Byfork, Montana. Icy on the rooftops, but high 53. That's in Fahrenheit. I don't know what that means. South Wales. She did. My daughter had a lovely birthday. She was 21 last week. It was really, really nice. From a hot and confused Australia. Sorry, Shanti. Sorry to hear that. 11 degrees in San Jose. That's the same here. 20 below Fahrenheit. Ow. Okay. Slough. Clear day here. Raven, I don't know where you are. 11 degrees. Not so bad at all. Grey and chilly in Southwest Oregon. Ice in the shade. Oh my goodness. Gale warning for tonight. So let's make sure you batten down the hatches. So lovely to see you all. And I just forgot to say my prayer for peace, but I'm going to do that now. So Gamara Shiakon or Fudna Krinya. Gamara Shiakon in our Jaili agus in our Jirha. Ganairi Lin Lenarkich Garamaka. Gamij Buikas Jiv Je Chivdaga is spirit Chivdaga. As the fever of day calms towards twilight, may all that is strained in us come to ease. We pray for all who suffered violence today. May an unexpected serenity surprise them. For those who risk their lives each day for peace, may their hearts glimpse providence at the heart of history. That those who make riches from violence and war might hear in their dreams the cries of the lost. That we might see through our fear of each other a new vision to heal our fatal attraction to aggression. That those who enjoy the privilege of peace might not forget their tormented brothers and sisters. That the wolf might lie down with the lamb, that our swords be beaten into plowshares, and no hurt or harm be done anywhere along the Holy Mountain, with thanks to John O'Donoghue. Hi, John from Ardnamurchan. Natasha said it's been mild this week, but -6 or 10 forecast for next week. You've been wood gathering too, just in case. Well done. Wise, I don't know whether you're a Cailleach or not, but anyway, you have the wisdom of the Cailleach in you. And Bernie from the Netherlands, Cheshire, North Hampshire. So we are going to Norfolk Island in Australia today. It's actually Friday morning there. So I would like to introduce my guest this evening, Linda Fielder. Linda, you are so welcome to this Fireside Chat. And I know you're a regular attender at these, and I'm always impressed that you get up early in the morning, because I am not an early morning person to join in these. So you're so welcome.
Thanks, Eimear, and hi everyone. Lovely to be here.
So I've never been to Australia. I've been to New Zealand because we met 4 years ago. More about that later. But just tell us what Norfolk Island is from, what it's like, your background, and why you're there.
Okay, so that's going to be quite a long story in one question. So Norfolk Island is a very small island, about 35 square kilometres, with a population of about 2,000 people. So it's really just a village. but it's a tourist island. So at any one time we have up to 1,000 tourists, which does boost the population. And it's halfway between New Caledonia and New Zealand. There's a volcanic ridge that runs from New Caledonia to New Zealand. And Captain Cook actually found Norfolk Island in 1774 when he was out exploring and found Australia and found New Zealand. He followed the ridge from New Caledonia towards New Zealand and came across birds, which was when he said, ha, there's going to be land here somewhere. And Norfolk Island is actually 3 islands, so one bigger island with 2 small islands. And putting it in the world's geography, it's 1,600 kilometres southeast of Brisbane and about the same northeast of Sydney. So in the middle of the ocean. And but it's a volcanic plug, so it's very hilly, very mountainous. Well, not really mountains, but it's high, right down to the ocean, with beautiful beaches and rugged coastlines. And it's a great big village. We have cows that are allowed to roam the streets. So cows have right of way. They don't come through town because of cattle grids, but everywhere else. And the speed limit is 40. So we don't drive very fast. We also have a big collection of wild chickens that absolutely try and run across the road in front of you. So why did the chicken cross the road? They do that here. And yes, it has a very mixed and varied history. So unlike Europe, of course, we have no sacred site monuments at all. And that's true of most of Australia as well. But Norfolk Island apparently was first settled by the Polynesians, who were travelling from the islands in the Pacific to New Zealand, and they used to stop over here. And they came from 800 AD to 1500 AD, and we're not sure why they stopped, but they did. And then in 17...
They didn't stay?
They didn't stay.
Okay,
no,
it was just...
No, it was uninhabited, completely uninhabited until 1788, when the first fleet left England with 11 ships and 1,000 convicts to settle Australia. And 6 weeks after they settled Australia, they settled Norfolk Island, and it became a convict settlement, a place to put prisoners. Yeah. Wow. So, and that convict settlement ran from 1788 till 1814, and then they left it alone completely for 11 years. And then it was another convict settlement from 1825 to 1855. And they do say they put the worst of the worst convicts here. They were people they couldn't control, basically. So put them on an island and there's nowhere they can go. And then in 1856, the Pitcairn Islander people, so who were the descendants of the mutiny on the Bounty, the Pitcairn Island people had settled, the mutineers had settled on Pitcairn Island, and they were running out of space. They were multiplying in their, the families were multiplying. They had not enough room to grow food and to settle on. And so one of them travelled to England, met with Queen Victoria, who said, I have an island you can go to. We're just about to pull the convicts off Norfolk Island and you can settle on Norfolk Island. So here we have a very mixed heritage, but it's basically the mutineers from the Bounty, from that story. And when I was quite young, I'd heard of the story. I thought it was a made-up story, but it's a very real story, and the descendants all still live here. So quite an interesting back.
Just to get back to the convict, I know many convicts, I know from ones who left from here, they were, once they had served their time, they were able then to change their status somewhat. So were all the convicts removed, or were those who had actually finished their sentence, or were they so bad that like they were lifers, or are any of their descendants still there, or were they all completely removed?
They were all completely removed. And
wow.
So, but they often, most of them, they were either hung or they got their freedom. So it has a very sad history in that way, that many people were killed and hung here just because they did, look sideways at the wrong person, really for very minimal offences. But no, they were all removed and got sent back to Australia. But they all got their freedom. And I do think a lot of them had many more opportunities in Australia than they perhaps would have back in Ireland or England. So yeah, but getting back to Norfolk, so it's very basic. We rely on rainwater. We only have rain tanks. We have no street lighting. Yes, so, and we rely on everything. We grow a lot of our own fruit and vegetables, but anything else has to come by ship. And so we're really aware of what we do, what we buy. We try not to buy plastic because, as you can imagine, you know, the environment is very, very important, but there's also there's no big hole just to throw your plastic and your rubbish in. And so we have to take everything we use to the waste station, to the recycle station. So we wash everything and we separate everything. And it makes you think a little bit more about what you're actually buying and how you're using things and things like that. So that's good in a good way. And Norfolk, because we have no street lighting, we also have brilliant night skies. So it has that dark sky rating, yes. But yeah, very, very beautiful, but very quiet. But if you love the beach, which is in my heart, I've always loved the beach and lived near the beach. This is my place at the moment. So I'm not saying it's forever, and I have moved a lot. I think when I counted up, I've had 55 different houses or flats. So that's quite a few. Well, my husband was in mining, you know, and so we did move a lot. And once you move, then it's easier to move the next time. So, yeah.
Wow.
But it's very different. I had been looking for a cooler place to live. So I'd lived in the tropics, so Northern Australia and the Solomon Islands. I lived for 5 years. Very, very hot. I used to love the heat. But as I've got older, I just can't tolerate the heat. And so landing here was part of my journey, looking for somewhere cooler to live. And I actually came on holidays here, chasing my convict ancestor who had come from Ireland in 1827. He was a 17-year-old boy, got caught for pickpocketing. And this was his third internment when he got to Norfolk Island. But anyway, I'd been doing my family history for about 10 years, and I wanted this person who was my first person to come to Australia, really, Patrick Sullivan was his name. He just really grabbed my attention somehow. And when we weren't going overseas or weren't going anywhere else, I just thought, well, I'll go to Norfolk Island and I'll try and find out a bit more about this ancestor of mine. And so I walked into the research centre, which is actually where I work now. So I do family history research on anyone that's lived on Norfolk Island. And years ago, when I was doing my, research on my family history, I used to sit there and think, oh my goodness, wouldn't it be wonderful if I could ever make this into a job? This would be the best job that I could ever have. And so walked into the research centre where I now work and looked around and thought, oh my God, this would be my dream job. This would be wonderful. And as it turned out, got talking to people who worked there, found out there was a job going, got the job, which is why I moved to Norfolk Island. So, and but just to turn the story around a little bit, I also do tours and I'm a tour guide. And I remember listening to Ziggy, quite a number of her interviews, how she used to talk about being a tour guide. And I thought, oh my goodness, I would love to do that. Somewhere in me thought, there was a part of me that thought, I really love to do that. And so thank you, Ziggy. If you're out there, if you ever get to listen to this, you were such a great mentor in that way that you inspired me to be a tour guide, which is what I do now. So yeah. But and there's many, many facets to my job, but I really, really love my job. So, and I had been retired for 5 years before I came to Norfolk. So I thought, yes, it's a change of life kind of a job. So, but getting back to me and the ocean. So as a druid, I know most druids love the trees, and I do love the trees, but I've always loved the ocean, and especially sitting beneath the trees that are on the edge of the ocean, that liminal space. But another thing that grabbed me when I first came to Norfolk Island was they advertised in their brochures these beautiful big Moreton Bay fig trees. I don't know if you know what they are. They're like, in Bali, they're sacred trees. They're the great big rainforest trees that have the Tarzan vines hanging down.
Yeah.
Yes. And anyway, I said to my sister-in-law, who I came on holidays with, we have to go and see those trees. And just another thing that drew me to Norfolk. So we went out to the trees, parked near them, and I walked up to the first tree, which is the very biggest tree, and put my hand on the trunk. And he said in this very deep voice, "I've been waiting for you." But anyway, they're very, very sacred trees. We have a small group of Filipino people who live on Norfolk Island, and they won't go anywhere near them because they say those trees are where the fairies live. So, but again, we don't have monuments. We don't have markings for sacred sites, and this is true all over Australia. So I've had to use my own inner radar to find sacred sites or sites that are special to me. So, yeah.
Pretty much the work of a druid. I have a question from Gabriella here. Do you feel you're completing a circle by going to the island, researching and landing the job? This is one question. How do you relate to Patrick's story now that you're part of his environment? Fabulous story. Thank you.
So definitely it feels like I'm completing a circle. And when I first came here, I thought, what a wonderful opportunity because he was here in a very sad and bad situation. What a wonderful opportunity to be able to heal that past, heal that DNA. And I know people that you've interviewed before have talked about the DNA and can we heal our past and heal our future? And I feel like very much so being here. More initially, I feel now I sit with it really well. But I used to go and sit on the water's edge and speak to him and see through his eyes the sights that he would have seen. And so I very much feel like I know him very well. It may even be me. It could have even been me in a past life. But I definitely feel like I've healed that space for him and then my family line down the track. So I've healed the past and healed the future just by being with intent in the right space. So does that answer the question?
I think so. It's beautiful. Just to get back to Patrick, were you able to trace him after he left the island, when the Pitcairn people came?
Oh, yes. So when he first came on the boat so he was born in Bohiboy, which is West Cork on the border of Kerry. I don't say that town correctly. Can you say it for me?
The Irish is Boherbui, which could be the Yellow Road or could be the Road of the Cailleach, because bui is an old word for Cailleach. So it's Boherboy. Yeah, that's just the anglicised, which makes no sense at all. It's the Irish is the Yellow Road.
Okay. That's where he was born, and it's near the Drogheda Stone Circles. Is that West Cork? On that road. Anyway,
is it Drumbeg?
I have it in my mind. What is it?
Not Drumbeg.
So, I think so.
And there's lots of stone circles in Cork, of course. It's one of the.
Of course.
We'll leave that part. Anyway.
Yeah, we'll leave that part. So then he was a boat boy working in Cove, and he got caught pickpocketing, and was sent to Australia for 7 years, which was the minimum sentence for convicts in those days. Yeah. And he served his time north of Sydney, near Newcastle in the country, and there wasn't a peep out of him because he had food, he had board, and he had a job because they put them out to work for people with properties. But when he finished his time, he received his certificate of freedom, and 6 months later, he's caught reoffending because what did they have? They have nothing. And I don't think things have changed very much for people who go to prison, even these days. They come out of prison and they might get a little bit of government help, but they've really got to start their lives again. And so Patrick was caught reoffending and was sent to Moreton Bay in Queensland, which was a long way in those days. It's even quite a long day, especially by Irish standards, but it's a long way, probably 1,000 kilometres north. And so he was sent to Moreton Bay, which was, the wilds of Queensland. And he actually ran away. He got away from Moreton Bay, and he was AWOL for 18 months. Wow. So, but they found him in Penrith, which is just west of Sydney. And they found him because he had tattoos on his forearm, hand-drawn ones, letters probably of his family members. And there was a thing in our family line, never get a tattoo, and we never knew where it came from. But when I heard that, I thought, oh my goodness, that's where that's come from. So when 18 months later, he was, running wild for 18 months, and they found him and they sent him to Norfolk Island because, as I said, this is where they put the prisoners who they couldn't control, basically. And he was here 2 years, kept his head down, but there was a very good head of the convicts at that time who brought in a new way of dealing with them and gave them points and rewards for good behaviour, whereas before and after that, they were always just flogged for bad behaviour or hung, as I said. And so perhaps this man gave them a little bit of hope. Anyway, so he was 2 years here, then went back to Australia for a couple of years and did finally get his freedom, where he went to Mudgee. So Mudgee is northwest of Sydney, a beautiful country area. They grow wine there now. And he bought a big property in Mudgee, got married and had 5 children.
Okay.
And so, but yes, he died at 53, which was very, not that young for those days, but he spent half his life in prison, basically. But that's where my grandfather grew up, on that property in Mudgee. So, so Patrick was my great-great-great-grandfather. So first person to come to Australia, yes. Which could lead me into, give me a question. I'll have a sip.
Okay, Shanti, who's in Australia, she just says, living in Australia, we learn about the Indigenous culture and the dream times and about the rainbow serpent. Even though they have sacred sites, as a Druid, I also find it more meaningful to find my own sacred places. And I think that's really important when you're in a different landscape, to your ancestors going way, way, way back. And I think all of us need to have our own connection with every landscape we're in.
We do. So, yes, more recently, I've got into dowsing, really just to, it's something I've been always interested in and didn't think I could do it. But so, how I actually got into dowsing in the beginning was I studied for 7 years to become a herbalist and a homeopath. And this is from 1995 into 2003, whatever. And I did my clinical hours. So when at the end of your study, you had to go and spend time with a naturopath or a herbalist who had been practicing. That was part of it, and they had to assess you, to make sure. Anyway, I got a friend of a friend in Perth, and I went to Perth and spent time with this lady. And the very first day I'm there, she's assessing somebody, as to what they needed, herbal medicine wise. And her practice was, so she'd assess the person and then she'd retreat to her backroom, laboratory, whatever, to mix up the herbs. So then she pulls out her pendulum when we get to the back room, and she's just going along dowsing for which herbs were correct. So I thought, yeah, I can do this. So initially then I used to just use a pendulum for the things that I needed. And then one day I thought, you know what, I don't even need that. I just tune in to what I need. And I actually had the pleasure or I see it as a gift to actually use that one day. So it's body dowsing. Billy Gorn was a famous Irishman that could body douse. But anyway, so getting back to the last comment about Australian Aboriginal sites and things. So my husband, and we're divorced now. We were together 20 years, but we broke up 20 years ago. He was an Aboriginal person. His mother was Aboriginal Chinese background. Anyway, he grew up, he would have been stolen generation. So I'm not sure if you know what that is, but
well, I do. Will you explain what the stolen generation is for those of our viewers who might not know?
So he was brought up by his white grandmother because his mother left and went back to her family. But so stolen generation was anyone of mixed blood in Australia, and that was right up to the 70s. The government officials came and took the children and put them in institutions, basically, thinking they could look after them better because they were of mixed race. And so my husband and his younger brother were told by their grandmother, if anyone ever comes, you have to say you're Greek, because he does look a little bit Greek, the curly hair and the tan skin. If anyone comes, you say you're Greek so that you don't get. So he was brought up not being able to say that he was Aboriginal or talk about being Aboriginal, because for that reason, for being scared of being taken away. But when I met him, I said to him, you have to be really proud of being Aboriginal, and I brought my boys up to also be proud that they were part Aboriginal. But saying that, so I lived in Australia. The Australian person will know where I'm talking about. I lived in Port Hedland. I lived in Groote Island. So Groote Island is an island in the Gulf of Carpentaria off the top of Australia. And those places were big Aboriginal populations. And so I actually got to spend a lot of time with Aboriginal people in their own communities, and seeing those, cave paintings, wall paintings on that was sacred to them. They put those paintings and signs in places that were very special. So I got to know about, the Aboriginal way of life and special places through living in the communities. So I feel very gifted, for that. But the story I'm getting back to now was also with the Aboriginal people in the old times in Australia, they rounded them up from wherever they lived. And it's like the American Indians, and they put them on a mission. In America, it would be called a reservation, but they put them on a mission so that they could look after them, like really, but anyway. So my husband's family people were from North Queensland, and they put them on a mission just north of Brisbane. So my husband's mother had died quite a number of years before, and it was a huge cemetery. This day we went for a family reunion with all of the family to Cherbourg Mission, and he and his brother were trying to find where their mother was buried. But if you think about little tiny timber crosses, 1,500 or so in this cemetery, with only a little, white chalk mark of the name on the cross. Anyway, his brother had been there once before trying to find where the mother was buried. And this day, we'd looked and looked and looked up and down the rows, but we couldn't find where she was buried. And then they said, look, we've got to go. We've got to go to this family reunion. And I said, no, we're going to find her. So I just said to her, show me where you are. And I walked. And as I walked from like the southeast corner of the cemetery, I walked, always pushing forward, always pushing west a little bit, and just walked 2 minutes straight to her.
Wow.
Where she was. Yeah. And then everyone just broke down crying, like it was just such a beautiful event. And I got to that story, in the long way around, didn't I? But just talking about dowsing and feeling your way and feeling, where perhaps sacred sites are, and using that inner knowledge rather than relying on what's out there, because often what's out there can't tell us where we should be.
No, and I know from my landscape speaks to me, and that's what teaches me. So regardless of what landscape, I'm lucky that I'm in the landscape of my birth and where I belong, and I have a sense of belonging here. It still speaks, and hopefully anyone, we all listen to the voice of the landscape. It might be speaking a different language at the beginning, but you get used to the sound and the music of the place. So Taimi, who's in Finland, it's so true about those personal places, what I found having lived here in Finland is that you recognize sacred places of elders and old souls if you have the gift.
Oh. Anyway, if I may, I'd like to start at the beginning and talk about when I was little, and that kind of leads into what brought me to Druidry. But so I grew up in Sydney, in Balmain, and Balmain was a harbour foreshore suburb, and from when I can remember, and I can remember back to it, I think I have memories of being at least 2.5. I can sort of remember back that far. I always had an audience, a great crowd of people around me that I sort of thought everybody did. And when I heard John Matthews talk about his story at one stage, I thought, wow, that's the closest thing that have come to someone else explaining what I had. So I had this audience of people. I don't know if I saw them, but they're certainly there, this great audience of people. So I never did anything wrong when I was really little. They were all watching me. There was no way I could ever do anything wrong at all. But by the time I got to the age of 7, I was very aware of my body. This is all I can sort of put it together. And I thought, I don't want them watching me anymore. I became aware of, I suppose, my sexual body at 7, not really sexual, but you know what I mean? Before then, I was just whoever I was. And then I was aware that I was a girl, and I thought, I really don't want them watching me anymore. So I just blocked it out completely. And but I've since then, over the years, I've had a few psychic readings and tarot bits and pieces, and they always say to me, there's a crowd of people waiting to speak to you. So, but I had that from a very, very early age. I was brought up Church of England and had to go to Sunday school, and always just thought, oh, this is just such the waste of time. I'd rather be outside at the beach or, outside playing. And so went to a normal, public school, as we call it in Australia. And then when I was about 10 and a half, my mother and my best friend's mother decided that we needed to go to the Catholic school so that we could go to the Catholic high school, because the normal public high school wasn't very good. And so, this was it. We had to change schools in grade 6 in order to be able to go to the Catholic high school. And I remember going to the Catholic high school, and, the first week was catechism and whatever. And I came home and said to my parents, I'm not learning that rubbish they're trying to teach me.
How old were you?
10 and a half, 11.
I had my epiphany at 9, but I kept my mouth shut. Okay, go on.
Well, because I had the difference. I maybe you went to Catholic school all the way, but because I had that grounding in non-Catholic school, and then went there and just said, I don't believe any of it, what they're trying to teach me there. And so I was really good at school, but high school just went down and down and down, because the longer I was there, the more I lost interest and the more I became, but teenagers do that anyway. I think you go through a teenage year where yes. So I left school at 14 and 9 months. Anyway, long story cut short, I eventually went to Teachers College and became a teacher after a few years of working. So I did that later in life. But in between, one of the first jobs I had, I worked in a patent attorney's office, and my lady who I had to sit next to would pull the tarot cards out at lunchtime. So by the time I was 18, I had been introduced to tarot, which I thought then was wonderful. And the other thing that happened when I was 18 was I remember going to the doctor because my period hadn't come and I wasn't pregnant. And so it was 4 or 5 months, and the doctors just said, well, you're not pregnant, so don't worry about it. It's nothing you can do. And I thought, no, this is not right. So I actually had acupuncture when I was 18, and to help me with my period. 3 days later, I got my period and was on time for the rest of my, fertile life. And
Wow.
so from a very early age, I was open to natural medicine and the power of that.
Mhm.
So yeah. But anyway, where am I going? I probably need another question. I think I've lost my
Well,
loop.
there's a number of people identifying with needing to shield and protect
Yes.
themselves from being observed by what we say here. Eddie Lennon is a storyteller here. The other crowd, and then
Yep.
Tiny that she can relate to Sunday school as well as Catholic school, and Blake, who's not raised Catholic, nor did he attend a Catholic school, but his friends who have that are now Druids tell him, and this is really interesting, that saint veneration prepared them quite well for polytheism. So it's really interesting how you know the formation of your early religious upbringing can actually be quite congruent, even though you leave it with Druidry. Jackie says, my sister and I told the priest he and most of the congregation were hypocrites at age 11. Oh, Jackie, that was very brave. I would never have done that. No, I mean, I wouldn't have had the courage to even think that.
No, but as you can see, coming from the outside, I could just see it for what it for me for what it was, and I'm not taking away people's religion if that's what they love. That's their own thing. Yeah. For me, I could just come from the outside, but also by the same token, because we hadn't made our confirmation, we weren't allowed to do the sacraments, and in fact, lots of times we were told we had to go and clean the basins while they did special things in church. We had to clean the toilets and things in the basins. Yeah, we were very segregated because we weren't Catholic. So, but anyway, that it didn't scar me. I'm sure I got on with it. So yes. So then moving on, I hadn't really had any spiritual kind of moments, except for the fact that all these people were there when I was really young. But I went to got married and went to live in Bougainville Island in the Solomon Islands, because that's where my husband's job went to. Mm-hmm. And because I was a primary school teacher, I used to get a job wherever he went with his job. But I remember, so Bougainville, Solomon Islands, very, very beautiful, very, very hot, tropical. And I learned a few things there, but I remember one of the first nights we were there, and he said, "Oh, I've got a chance to buy this yacht." And I'm thinking, "Oh, yacht, that's very extravagant, whatever." And but then I had this real sensation that we might need that boat to actually get away from the island. Now that's kind of way out, but go forward 3.5 years, and there was an uprising against the mine. They actually broke into the Mine magazine, and they started blowing up power poles. So there were 30 power poles up to the mine. They started blowing those up once a week. They started shooting at cars and buses. And so we actually lived for 18 months under army occupation and curfew in this place. And so that was a real, precognitive daydream that I actually had that told me that. But I loved the Solomon Island people. They have a different way of communicating. And when I first went there, you had to go to the market early in the morning to get your fresh fruit and vegetables, but beautiful fresh fruit and vegetables, just like Bali. But I would pick up a pineapple and say, how much is this pineapple? And they'd all giggle and, tell me how much it was. But as time went on, I'd realised that they actually did a lot of their communicating just with their facial features. And so in the end, I'd walk up and I'd, eye off a pineapple, and they'd put 2 fingers up, and I knew how much they were telling me. So no words were needed for every mundane thing. And I think that's great. It saves a lot of energy. We actually rabbit on a lot of the time about things that we really don't need to use our words for. So the body language was a wonderful thing that I got to know there. But it was very scary. And in the last 18 months that we were there, we were actually one of the last families to leave. And I left in January 90 with the kids. And the police and the army pulled out in March 90, and my husband helped sail a friend's yacht to the Philippines in April 90. So, it was Australian government hushed up a lot of what happened there, but they had a lot to do with it. And thousands of people were killed, and it's something you don't really hear about. But and I would hear years after that, it was very traumatizing, I think. I just coped because I had the children. But years afterwards, you'd hear a chopper and it would be like MASH. You'd know there'd be incoming bodies and things like that. It was, living in a war zone was just not something I ever thought I would do. And my husband had the chance to leave, but I think he should have been in the army. He liked I don't know if he liked the idea of it, but he could have left and he didn't. So we had to stay because, he wasn't leaving. So, and in the end, just to leave Bougainville, all the planes were booked out because everyone was trying to leave. And sooner or later, everyone did, but the planes were still all booked. So when you went to book a ticket, it looked like it was all full. And so the British High Commissioner to Papua New Guinea actually came to get some English people off Bougainville. And they said to me, look, the British High Commissioner is coming and we're leaving with him. You can come with us. And so actually that's how I got to leave. We went to Port Moresby and we had to actually stand at the standby desk all day just to get another flight back to Brisbane. But it was his clout that actually got us off the island and then got us, because there'd been people, even though they got off Bougainville, there'd been people stuck in Port Moresby for weeks and weeks and weeks, put up in hotels because they couldn't get back to Australia. So, and then when we did get back, we were actually classed as refugees and got quite a good government little payout until my husband found another job. So that was a different part of experience in my life. Yeah. But from there, so the other thing I would say that I didn't talk about as growing up, I had all these people, but the house I lived in actually had spirits that were very active.
Okay.
And so my parents used to play it down, but the doorbell would go all the time. Pictures did fall off the wall. There were tobacco and perfume smells in my parents' room. Our cat would be walking and then it would freeze with its tail really fluffy and then run 100 miles the other way. And so I had that background of spirits in the house. And when from Bougainville, I had no sort of feelings like that, except that, we needed this yacht perhaps to get away, which we didn't, but and then from there went to Port Hedland, where the first house that we got was very active with spirits again. And both my sons saw and heard the things that I saw and heard. And silly things, but, I remember my youngest son once sitting on my knee and my oldest son was opposite having breakfast and the kitchen was to the left. And my youngest, I actually saw an Aboriginal leg kick up and down out of the kitchen, which sounds ridiculous. But my 3-year-old son on my lap said, "Did you see that black leg, Mum?" So, and then he would say things like, "I don't like my bed where it is, Mum." I said, "Why not, mate?" He said, "Because if I put my hand down beside the bed, beside the wall, a little cold hand holds onto it."
Okay.
And then also my husband, who was very skeptical, said one night, he used to do night shift. And so often when he'd finish at 11. So when he'd come home, he would sleep in the spare room. I think that's why he slept in the spare room. But anyway, he said to me this morning, "Did you come and sit on the end of my bed last night?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, I think it was my grandmother." So that house, so that was like a portal, that house. That had many, many things. But it's interesting because both my boys and even my husband had the awareness, because there can often be some people in the house who, either block it out or are, so skeptical that they're not open to it. But I'm sure it comes from my family line. And so through the Sullivan line, getting back to Patrick. So I've read the Sullivans. And so we were not only from West Cork, but we were also from Castle Gregory and the Dingle Peninsula, as well as, yes, as well as Cratloe near Limerick.
Yeah.
And there were, I read an article once that the Sullivan women from that Cratloe area were kind of like white ladies in the fact that when death was going to happen in the family, they'd either see a white cat or a white hare. And so when but my mother was like that. My auntie, who's still alive, she's 89, she is like that. She knows, things without being told. But when their mother was dying, the morning that she died, my auntie got a knock on the door, and she opened the door, and there was a white cat sitting on the bottom step who just looked at her and then ran away. And so that was the portend that, that came through. So it is through that line. But then talking about the rest of your family line. So I have the Irish, which was the first to come to Australia. I have Welsh, and they were from near Lake Balla. That's where they came. Yes, yeah. So and he was a mariner as well. So he came to Australia as a seaman, as a sailor. And then on my English side, they all came from Hastings and Sussex.
Okay.
And my first English person to come to Australia was a naval surgeon. He was in the Navy and he came. But then my Scottish line goes right up. So it goes from Dunfermline in Fife. So they're all from Fife on the south east coast of Scotland. From Dunfermline, Dalgety Bay, all the way up to Dundee, and then Aberdeen, and further north to Fraserhead and Peterborough. So all along that coast, I think the Scottish people actually came to Australia in 1854, and that was because they were miners. And again, so there's that mining theme through the family. But the two sons had come early because they were coal miners, and they came to Newcastle in Australia to work in the coal mines. And one of them got married and had a few children, and then the wife died. So his family, his mother and his father and his siblings, came from Scotland to actually look after his children, and that's why they emigrated in 1856. Yes. So, but I hope to get back to the UK one day. When we're not travelling very far these days, but I've only been twice, but I hope to get back again. So,
Gabriella, who asked you an earlier question, she lives in Hastings. So have you, I know you were in Ireland 3.5 years ago, but have you gone to Scotland? Have you managed to trace that road all the way up to Peterborough?
Yes, I have. But so in 2017, I spent a month in Scotland and spent a week on Orkney doing an archaeology tour of Orkney, and so did all the stone circles and the cairns and everything. And then in 2019, before I came to Ireland, I did another tour around Scotland and spent a week on Shetland.
Oh, wonderful!
So,
wonderful.
Yes.
Wow.
So and so I hope to get back to Ireland and Scotland and parts of England. And I haven't been to Wales. I've never been to Wales, so I'd like to go to Northern Wales and to Anglesey maybe. And I'd just like to say a bit of and stop me if you need some questions, but I'm on a bit of a roll.
Go on, I'll let you go on your roll. This is all about you.
Ask me some questions. That's fine.
No question so much is that people are resonating. Tracy says, as a child, I experienced lots of spirits when I was growing up. California, kids are open and haven't been told not to believe in spirits. We're Irish, Scottish, Welsh, and Cherokee, so a good base. Neem, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name properly. My grandmother's uncle emigrated from Dundee to Australia in the 1870s. He was Sandy Anderson. So a number of people identified with your saying things differently. Just funny. My parents were, this is Jamie, my parents were told that I was not allowed to return to Sunday school. No idea which church it was. I told the teacher that the story about Jesus and Judas was not the way it happened and that it was unfair. So obviously that went down like a bomb. And then Natasha, this is really funny. I got into trouble for pointing out that Jesus and Mary could not have had blue eyes and white skin because they were from Palestine, not Paris. She was 10. And then Ricky says, I remember as a kid looking at Greek mythology and realizing the Catholics had created a saint for every Greek god. The vicar didn't like that observation. So we have a lot of stroppy children in this in our view as part of this chat tonight. It's wonderful.
Sure.
Brilliant.
Sure. And I think children see things for what they are. You know, they see things as they are. And, you know, and I think even the children coming through these days, you know, they're going to be different again. And but anyway, all I was going to say was I hope to get to Anglesey, and I just wanted to say a shout out to Christopher Hughes and thank him very much for his book on books on death and dying, and his talks on death and dying. Because when I lost my son 5.5 years ago, his books and his talks actually helped me a lot to get through, you know, that grief time that you go through like a wave. But yes, so I didn't actually get to the gathering in South Australia where Dave and Kerry and Christopher came to, but I wish I had gone to that to meet all those people. It's like wonderful having so many good mentors. That's all I was going to say about the OBOD group of people. There's so many strong mentors that you can relate to people and that can help you through times of grief or sadness, or just in times where you don't have a goal. Like I said with Ziggy, I would love to be a tour guide, and then I turn around and I'm a tour guide. So, you know,
Wonderful.
how does that happen?
Beautiful. Just want to get, there's one question here, but I want to get back to Christopher's book. What was it that stood out from that book on death and dying that was really helpful for you? What was it that resonated with you?
I think that, you know, that him saying that it wasn't easy and it wasn't good, but you know, there is more. And I've always believed in reincarnation, even when I was young. So it's not the fact that you're worried that that's the end, chapter or line, but he just made it real for me. And it's like, it's okay to be feeling, you know, terrible and sad and hurting, but it is a process. It is a process, and you will come through it, and you will, you know, feel different about it in a few months or years or however long it takes you. I think, you know, that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So yeah.
That's wonderful.
But there, no, it's okay. Saying that, so I lost my mother in 2006 very tragically, and my father had always said he hated funerals. He really hated funerals. He used to call them cold meat picnics. It's just, you know, it was just terrible. And so he said, we're not having a funeral. I don't know what we're going to do, but we're not having a funeral. And so I just rang around to the funeral parlors and rang around. And finally, after about 5, I got to this very helpful person who said, we can just do a direct cremation and you will just end up with the ashes. You don't have to have anything at a special funeral parlor. And so this was, you know, revelation to me. I had never heard of that before. No one I'd known had ever done things like that, you know, done it that way before. Because my mum was actually murdered, it was going to be 6 weeks before the autopsy could happen. And so, which is another kind of thing with Christopher Hughes, you know, that's what he does for a job. So, and everyone, you know, people were wanting to do something for my mother. So it was like, okay, I'm going to have to do this. I know I can do this. And it was just like hour by hour, I got fed a little bit more information about how it would unfold, so what we did was ask all her friends and we asked family members to come, and, you know, we had to go to the place where she was living when she died. So we just we rented a beautiful unit on the Gold Coast on the 22nd floor. She'd actually loved these units. She'd visited people who had stayed there. And I just asked everyone to come there to wear something bright, because my mother never wore black. Wear something bright, bring a flower. And so my friends and I just put the food together, and my sons were kind of like the ushers. So it was very big deal. It was all in the papers. It was all on the news. And so you didn't want reporters or people kind of, you know, finding out about it. And so my son's actually, we just told people, come to these units at this time, wear something bright, bring a flower, and that was it. And this is what we're going to have, a celebration of her life. And so my sons were like the ushers. As people would come, they'd bring them up in the lift. And so there might have been 80 people. It was a really big unit. There were probably 80 people. And there was a lovely big outdoor balcony. And so, as I said, hour by hour, I had been fed this information about how we would do it. And so we just sort of had afternoon tea. We had a few drinks. But I actually wrote a story of her life. And she was a pink lady. So she used to volunteer at the hospitals. That's what we call hospital volunteers here, that she was a pink lady. So about 20 of her pink ladies turned up with their uniforms on, their pink aprons. So we did this thing out on this balcony, and they were just lined the balcony in this big pink, sort of in their uniforms. And so I just did the story of her life. And but at the time, my partner and my sons actually stood in the points of the directions. I don't even know how that happened, but they were stood in the 4 direction points. And so we did, and then I got everyone to hold hands at once we'd said her story, got everyone to hold hands and, raise the energy, and it was a beautiful, beautiful celebration. So it turned something really ugly into something very, very beautiful. And then we had afternoon tea, a few wines, and a really nice celebration. And I just said to them, as you leave, can you take the flower that you bought and throw it in the river, which was right. The river was right where the river came into the ocean, this block of units. So it was a very liminal spot anyway. And say your own words for her as you leave. So that was before OBOD. That was way before OBOD.
Did your dad go to that?
Yes. Yes.
He did.
And I'll tell you something really funny. This woman kept coming up to me and she kept saying, "Your father's fly's undone. Your father's fly's undone." I said, and in the end I said to her, "Will you tell him? I don't have time. I don't have time to tell him." But he had a lovely time. And then I went to a psychic 3 times. This lady was very good after, a few months later. Mm-hmm. And the first thing the psychic said to me was, "Your mother wants to thank you for the way things were done."
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. So when the time came, how many years? 11 years later, that I lost my eldest son. So of course I did it again, and we did it on the beach, and then we did it with family in another place a few months later on the beach. And I still have some of his ashes, and I'm unsure what to do with them. And my son has his share, my other son, and my ex-husband has his share. And I said, really, one day we should get together and do something with the rest of them. I'm not sure how long to hang on to them, but anyway, I've got them now. So, and I don't even know how I got onto that subject, but it was a rare.
I asked you about Christopher's book.
Yes. So, yeah.
There's a question from Jackie. Did you look into spiritualism before Druidry?
Yes. So, as I said, I'd always lived in these houses and had this background of being a child that knew there was much more. The other was right there, like, right in our space, basically. But as I was turning 40, my husband said, "Do you want a party?" I said, no, I'm going on a spiritual retreat to Bali. I just had this thing in my mind. I'm going on a spiritual retreat to Bali, but I wasn't sure how or where. And then I was talking to this friend of mine, an old friend from Port Hedland where I'd lived, and she was saying about this woman from Perth who was a channel at the time. She was taking a group of people on a spiritual retreat to Bali. And I said, "Oh, I'd love to do that. That's what I've been wanting to do." And she said, "Oh, you won't get in because it's all booked out." Anyway, I rang this woman and someone had dropped out. So I met these people in Bali, these people that I'd never known before, and did this wonderful spiritual retreat in Bali. And Bali is a very magical spiritual place anyway. And so that was the start of that spiritual journey. So I did a lot of work with this lady who lived in Perth. And I went to Hawaii twice with her, to Maui, again on spiritual retreats. So I did basically all that before I came to OBOD. Yeah. Okay. So, and it was basically a lot of the stuff, not so much the 4 directions, but certainly ritual and a lot of meditation. So I had that background. And it was what I was craving. What do you want for your birthday? That's what I want for my birthday. So, yeah.
So what brought you to Druidry then? How did you find it?
So because I'd been working with this group and this woman, I was living on Groot Island, and I'd moved to Groot Island in 1994, and I think it was about 1995 or 1996 that I started talking to my friends about full moons and ritual, full moon rituals and meditation. And so we ended up with about 20 women in our group. We used to celebrate every full moon. We'd get together, we'd go to a different place. A different person would take turn to write the ritual and, just give honour. We'd have, cakes and ale afterwards and all of that. And I never liked the word witch. I could never even say the word witch. Maybe I've been burnt too many times, or who knows. But certainly there was a group of men on the island that's what they called us. Oh, the witches have been, gathering again, on the full moon. Sometimes we'd do it on the golf course and cast a circle with flowers and have it, at night time, obviously. And so, but it's only more recently that, and I'd still call myself a druid more than Wiccan, more than a witch. So how I got to Druidry was around that time I started reading Juliet Marilia's books.
Yeah.
Daughter of the Forest was the first one. And in the very back page, she had written, I'm a member of OBOD, and if you want to find more about it, you go to this website. And so I thought, I just thought I couldn't do that. That's for other people. I'm not good enough, but I'm not esoteric enough, or that must be for people who really have their spiritual act together, not even thinking about my whole background. And so even though I really wanted to find out more about it, I didn't. I just thought, but maybe it wasn't the right time. But anyway, I kept reading her books. And then I think it wasn't until 2014 or 15 that I actually joined OBOD. Okay. So that was, another 15, 17 years later. So what put me on hold, I don't know. Lack of, I thought druids were something very special, and that wasn't me. That wasn't who I was. So
but you're included now.
I know, but I don't know where that came from, because I was a confident person with a couple of degrees, and it wasn't like I wasn't a woman of the world. I was a woman of the world, but I just, maybe from past life, whatever happened, I just thought they were the others. They were on a higher level than I could attain, or something like that. But of course, when I joined, and you've got a question? Yeah.
No, I'm just thinking, it's all about timing.
Yeah.
So when you joined, what did you discover?
Oh, so when I joined, and the Bardic grade just flowed out of me, absolutely flowed out of me. I couldn't wait to get to the next one. And I wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote, and, without giving anything away. I'm sure there's people who, are all past the Bardic grade. But it was just like, I played guitar when I was young, but I just really didn't think that I was a bard, even though everything flowed out of me and it was what I needed at the time. And then saying that, so I actually then got to the ovate grade. And as I said, I'd been a herbalist at a homeopath 20 years ago. And I thought, great, the ovate grade's the one for me. That's the one that, I'm really going to shine in. But I'm a bit stuck. I'm halfway through. I'm a little bit stuck. But the funny point is that I'm now a bard because I tell story as part of my job. I'm a tour guide and tell stories. So I am actually a bard, and I do sing, but I don't sing for other people. So, and I've always painted. So, I have those sort of bit arty sort of things. But I think I'm looking at the OBOD course differently now from the point where I sit now. So the Bardic grade, as I said, it flowed out of me. But I've always been one that I've always started courses that I've finished, and I've always, wanted to get it right and do it right and finish it and get it all done. And now that I've been, I don't think I've done anything much for 2 years in my OVATE grade. But I've got a new job and I'm quite busy. But I now realise that the OVATE grade, it is the journey. It's not about finishing it all and getting it all done. It is the journey. And when the timing is right, then I will perhaps move on, because I really am interested to go further and see what the Druid course, because I've always been that, want to find out, have to know what that next bit is about. So, I would like to finish and get to that next grade. But yes. So that's what brought, thankfully, Juliet Marilia, and I still enjoy her books. She's still putting them out probably once a year or every 2 years, which is wonderful. Yeah.
So Julia Foyle, I'm a stuck OVATE 2, and Neem says the right time will come. And there's something about staying and just being where you are, that maybe that's what you're doing, what you need to do. Ferdiad says, years ago, I worked in a herbal dispensary, and one of my co-workers said that when I was describing remedies to clients and customers, it was a type of storytelling. Funny how the grades aren't really separate at all. I like that, Ferdiad. Well, every herb you're describing has a story. And
it does.
I don't know what you did in your herbal training. I'm a herbalist too, and we did a lot about the metaphysical properties of herbs, not just the physical ones. And they contain a story, and then often mythologies and stories around herbs.
Yeah.
So,
and that is a nice way to look at them. And years ago, when I was doing my business, and because I'm not working as a herbalist or homeopath now, but I used to make flower essences. And again, this is way before OBOD. And so I'd make them on the full moon once a month. And I just could be walking to work or in the garden, and a different flower would speak to me, like yell at me, make me, come on, it's time, And so, and again, when I first used to start, and because herbal flower essences are for emotional, things. So yeah, it's on that higher level, the etheric level. And yes, and that was a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. But I've not turned my back, but I've left that behind. But I think we can get stuck in ways and habits. And but I was just glad recently, as I told you, I had to go to Australia for some tests, and I'd had headaches for 6 weeks. But all the scans and everything showed nothing wrong. And actually, the day before I left, I had acupuncture again. And I haven't had a headache since I had the acupuncture. So it's just like, but because here we don't have any medical facilities really at all. If you're really sick, they put you on a fast jet and send you over to Australia. Okay. So basically, yeah, that's the way it happens.
There's a GP, yeah?
Oh yes, there are doctors. But any tests or things, you have to go to Australia. So, which doesn't really bother me at all. Yeah. But but getting to that, the etheric and the airy side of things. So at one stage I had a farm, and was a biodynamic farm, and so I read a lot of Steiner, because he put that system of agriculture together, and so we farmed it to the letter, biodynamically, and read a lot about Steiner. And I loved my farm, but it was just too much hard work. But the thing I'd say one of the best things I've ever done in my life is on that farm, and I grew vanilla.
Oh.
So vanilla, yeah. So vanilla is a vine that needs a support, and it's an epiphyte, so it lives off the tree or whatever its support is.
Okay.
And it has a green orchid flower, and it only opens for half a day. And so this is where I've gone. This is the thread I've pulled through with this. I made the flower essence out of that vanilla flower as a window of opportunity, because it's only open for half a day. And I actually helped a few people. One friend was looking for a stem cell transfusion, with leukemia, and she couldn't find the right match. And so I sent her this flower essence for the window of opportunity, and she actually got 3 matches that week.
Wow.
So, yeah, and so it's very, very powerful. But it was a lovely, aside from the etheric side of it, it was a lovely, lovely thing to do. Yeah, to grow the vanilla. And but it was just hard work working on that farm in 35+ degree heat.
I can well imagine.
And my partner flew in and out, so he went away to work and came back. So he was only ever home for a week or 2 at a time. So a lot of the hard work was left to me. And I thought, I can't keep this up. I just cannot physically. Mentally I could, but physically I didn't have the energy for it. So I decided to build a labyrinth. So I made a labyrinth, and I used to walk it every day with the intent of somehow being able to leave. And so we actually got a letter for some people who looked at the property before we bought it and said, if you're ever thinking of selling, we're kicking ourselves for not buying it. If you're ever thinking of selling, can you please let us know? We'd like to buy it. So I said to my partner, here, we've got this opportunity to leave. I said, I can't physically do this work anymore. And he said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not leaving. I'm not selling. I said, well, I'm not staying. So I really believe that the labyrinth was the gateway that, well, it actually brought in the opportunity to leave. And he said no to that. So I was then able to leave that farm and leave that relationship. So.
Wow.
Yeah. So we get the tools we need at the time, kind of, don't we? If we're kind of open to that opportunity. Yeah. So
it's really interesting, I didn't know vanilla was an orchid, actually. And does it have many flowers, or is it one flower per vine?
Oh, yes. So it's an orchid, and you actually have to train it for the flower to be reachable, because you have to hand pollinate every flower that then becomes a vanilla bean.
Okay.
So, and that's this orchid flower it's a green orchid that's only open for half a day. So when you hand pollinate it, or even if you don't, the flower closes. But if it's pollinated, it takes 9 months to actually grow into a bean, just like a baby.
Wow.
Yep. And then to harvest it, so you pick them, you blanch them for 30 seconds in boiling water, pull them out, and then for at least 3 to 4 weeks, you've got to put them out in the sun every day to dry. And then when you bring them in at night, you've got to keep them warm, again, just like a baby. And I'm thinking, oh my God, how am I going to keep these beans warm? So I bought electric blankets and used to keep them warm, wrapped up in the electric blankets. And then you have to air dry them for another 3 months. So that's why vanilla is so expensive, because it's at least a 15-month process. But as I was working with it, the smell is just heaven. And I knew I'd done it before. When I worked with that vanilla, I knew I had that strong feeling that I've done this before. And nothing about it was hard to me. I just learned about it on the internet and went and did it. And so it was the most pleasurable, thing really that I've ever grown, I'd have to say. So
that's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. There's the story. The story of the vanilla orchid. 9 months
to grow like a baby. Really, that to me, the correlation is too close to. Yeah. So Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm blown away by that. Absolutely blown away with that.
Okay.
Julie says, "Oh my word! I wonder if it's the same with cardamom. That's really expensive too. Cardamom isn't. The seeds are not. I think you might be mistaking it with. I don't know if you're mistaking it with
Saffron.
saffron, because cardamom isn't.
Mm.
It's yeah. That's
No.
a fascinating story.
Yes, it is. It is. It was a wonderful thing and a gift, another gift, I think, that came to me. And how it came to me on the farm, we had about 100 lime trees. We had this old mango orchard of 80 trees, and there were lots of 300 mandarin trees and lots of tropical fruit trees. Yeah, it was a lot to do. And we had one vanilla plant that the previous owner had planted, and without training it. So you've got to actually train this plant to stay low so you can hand pollinate it. So again, the correlation between babies and children, you have to train it to. Anyway, this vanilla vine had grown right up the top of this tree. And obviously vanilla is grown in Mexico, in Madagascar, and it's actually grown throughout the Pacific Islands now. They've got onto it. And because we went to Vanuatu and saw them growing it there, in Vietnam. And so one morning underneath this tree, there was a beautiful, very large vanilla bean that had done it all by itself. So I thought, my goodness, in Mexico and Madagascar, they have a certain insect that will actually pollinate the vanilla, and you don't have to hand pollinate it. And I thought, oh my God, that's wonderful. We must have an insect that will pollinate the vanilla. So I just went out and bought 30. So it grows from cuttings. So I went to the Cairns markets and bought about 30 cuttings and planted them underneath the mango orchard because they need structure, and that was their place to grow that already had a watering system there. So it was just, I was like in a meditative state walking through that vanilla mango orchard. It was just the most beautiful thing that I've ever done, I think. So, yeah.
That's incredible. Wow. Julia says, cardamom powder, £4 for a small 83-gram jar here in London. It must be London prices, because I can get a bag of cardamom seeds for about maybe €4 here in Ireland. So anyway, cardamom is the queen of spices, and I love cardamom. But vanilla, wow, that is such a wonderful story. I have to look that up. And Neem says he saw them planted and woven in Mexico. I don't know what that means, whether the weave the.
No, so when you plant them, you let it grow up to sort of reachable height, and then you bring it back down to the ground and weave them, and they weave themselves through, so that it's sort of like it ends up looking like a woven thing around the tree or the structure that you're doing it on.
Wow.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Wow. So it's brilliant.
What you don't.
I know you have the sea environment in Norfolk Island. Your trees, Neem says they wove the pods into talismans, I can imagine. But you say you grow your own vegetables now. What's the tree life or the tree population like in Norfolk Island?
Oh, okay. So it's a big population of Norfolk pine. So they're indigenous to the island, Norfolk pine. They're actually grown all along the east coast of Australia, but the seeds come from here. And the seed is beautiful. It's a little packet about that big, sort of, and that when it opens, the seed is inside, the Norfolk pine. So beautiful. So the whole island is covered in Norfolk pine trees. And we have a national park that's about a quarter of the size of the whole island.
Okay.
And we also have another area, we call it the 100-acre forest. And so it was 100 acres set aside in the early days that they thought they'd try and grow all sorts of trees there just to see which trees grew the best. So it's a beautiful place to go walking. You can go there and go, so there's nothing else. It's 100 acres, it's a forest. Wow. And you walk through a path and you come to the ocean, and you can sort of play on the rocks in the ocean, and then you walk back up. It's because everything's hilly here because it's a volcanic plug. So yeah, so it's mainly pine trees. There are two main vegetable growers on the island who grow everything organically as they can.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a very good veggie garden at the moment. After I left the farm, I couldn't even look at anything green for a couple of years.
I can imagine.
It was like anything green was hard work to me. So I didn't really, yes. And I have some microgreens growing. I've got some herbs growing, and I've got a plum tree and that was already here. So we have stone fruit trees grow really well here. But everything we eat, stone fruit, plums and
oh, sorry, I thought there was a special fruit called a stone fruit.
No, stone fruit, plums and nectarines and apricots and those sort of things. But everything we eat is very seasonal. So, Christmas is the stone fruit, and then watermelon and a few pineapples, not many. And then around this time of year, it's a bit sparse until we get to March, when the citrus will start to come on. And then we have oranges and mandarins and grapefruit and lemons and limes, plentiful. And that lasts till about August. And we also have guavas. We have cherry guavas, which are red, and they're beautiful. We get to August, and then we have a few months where there's not much local fruit at all until we get to November and the Christmas fruit again. So what we eat is very seasonal. And in summer, there's no broccoli or cauliflower or any of those things that need that coolness to set the seeds. So we eat, sporadically, and it's not like going to Woolies or Coles to be able to buy any fruit in any season. We definitely have to eat seasonally. Yeah. So it takes a bit of getting used.
In the lean times, how do you prepare for the lean times? When you haven't got fruit or you haven't.
So frozen fruit and frozen berries, and some preserves, and make jam out of the guava jelly. It's really nice. It's a bit like quince paste, so it's a jam made out of the red guavas that you have with cheese and things. So
very nice.
Yeah. But and as I said, there's a lot of cows here, but for some reason they don't. Meat is very expensive, so I don't know. But fish is so plentiful, and so basically my diet is fish. There's plentiful fish, and it's not expensive, so I'm very happy for that. But so getting to the ocean, so I've always been attracted to the ocean. I remember the first time my mum ever took me to one of the city beaches, Coogee Beach, and it was stairs going down into the water, and I was just happy to go down those stairs and go off into the water. Like my mother's like, "Come back, you've got to go," and I was like 2.5. No, I'm in my element here, and so I've always loved the water, and always have to be near the water. There's only been one time in my life that I lived in a place that wasn't on the water, on the edge of the water, and that was in the Northern Territory. It was a place called Timber Creek. And actually the water wasn't that far. We're actually on a creek, a big creek, that was full of big crocodiles, like huge crocodiles.
Who wouldn't share that water with you? Okay.
No, but we used to go fishing in the crocodile water. But anyway.
You used to what?
So we used to go fishing in a boat with the crocodiles around us.
All right.
Yeah.
Then
crocodiles No, they're basically pretty docile things. I mean, if you jump into the jaws of them, I suppose, and they're hungry, but they only eat like once every 6 weeks or so. They're not, so it's not, they're not opportunists. If they're not hungry, they're not going to eat. You just have to be in the wrong place at the wrong time to be taken by a crocodile. And it's mainly people who are taken who swim in their water at night time. You just wouldn't do that. But
okay.
But anyway, this place where I lived was called Timber Creek, and it was the furthest I've ever been in my life from the ocean, from the water. And I actually felt like a starfish that had been washed up on the beach. If I was doing a lot of homeopathy work, and I just felt like a starfish. a dried out starfish that couldn't get back to the water. And anyway, I had, interestingly, I had breast lumps at the time, which turned out to be cysts anyway, that, you know, it's an ongoing thing. And then I was going through my materia medica, the homeopathy materia medica, and the remedy for breast lumps and breast cancer is, believe it or not, the red starfish.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was another gift, you know, another eye opener, that another cord that pulled me along. But saying that, I learnt to scuba dive when I lived in Bougainville, and the water was clear. You know, you could see underwater as far as you can see above the water. And once I learnt to scuba dive, once I got over my fear of sharks, you know, you have to just, and it's not even, you do see sharks, but it's the idea of sharks. Like we think sharks are in the water and they're going to get us. And it's the same as the crocodile. But once I got over my fear of sharks, then the relaxation is second to nothing under the water. So you slow your breathing right down. It's such a meditative state with the most beautiful colors of the coral and the fish and the blue ocean. And so my most peaceful times ever were diving. That was just the most peaceful place I could ever be, except for a few times when the currents got strong, or, you know, and you had a guest on a few weeks ago, and now she was a female guest that I think you said to her, what was the most reckless thing you'd ever done? And she said she went swimming after a fight with her boyfriend. She went swimming at night out into the ocean, and she probably should have drowned, but somehow the currents turned around and you know, she brought her back in. So I'd given up diving after my husband and I split up, the marriage split up, because he and I and the kids used to dive together all the time. So that was sort of what we did together. And then with my next partner, I more or less did a lot of snorkeling, and I did a lot of spearfishing rather than scuba diving under the water. And then after Blake died, after my eldest son died, I decided to get back into diving. So, you know, I'm 60 years old, you know, going to get back into diving. And I wasn't nearly as fit as I was when I was younger, but I thought, doesn't matter, I can still do this, which, you know, think about trying to choose a hobby that always made me really happy. And that's why I decided to get back into diving. And there is a wreck dive. So it's a ship that's been sunk under the water. It's just a bit south of Townsville, and it's rated as one of the best wreck dives in the world. It's called the Yongala, and it sank in a cyclone with 100 and something people on all those years ago. So they all went down with the ship. But the currents there can be really strong. So this day I thought, right, before I give up diving, I've got to dive the Yongala. You know, that's one of those, you know, macho things. I'm not normally like that, but I thought, right, I've got to dive the Yongala. So I've gone out on this boat trip, got to where the wreck was, and because I did a lot of dive levels, so I'm a dive master. That's sort of just before an instructor, so I know my diving anyway. This guy, the boat guy, said, so we're going to go with the current along the edge of the ship, and then we're going to turn around and we're going to come back against the current. And I said to him, no, that's a flawed dive plan. You must go against the current so that when you turn around, you've got the energy to come back. The current will bring you back. And he said, no, this is our mooring. That's the way the current's going, so we don't have any choice. So I knew from the beginning that this was going to be a scary and not a very good situation. So we get in the water. The current was so strong that it was ripping off our goggles, our face mask, going down the rope. So we get down to the bottom, and it took us no time to get to the end of the ship because the current took us. And when it came time to turn around, we had a real lot of trouble swimming against that current, swimming back to where our mooring line was. And obviously our dive leader was frightened of this boat guy because she was still trying to get us back to the mooring line, and we couldn't swim against the current. But in the end, she ran out of air. Another girl ran out of air. You actually have a spare air hose. Everyone has a spare air hose to give somebody if they run out of air. So she grabbed someone's spare air and another person had to grab somebody else's spare air. And then we just had to rise to the surface. Normally you would do, we call them deco stops, to off-gas the nitrogen from your blood system, because the nitrogen can form bubbles and go to your heart or your brain and kill you. And so we had very deep. We had no chance to do a deco stop, and we just had to rise straight to the surface where the current took us, and another boat had to pull up its anchor and come and rescue us. So when you think about, I knew before I even went down into that water that this was not going to be a good situation. But why did I do it? I don't know why I did it. But anyway, I survived it. But the other thing was, so coming to the surface, I thought, oh, well, this is it. This is where I die. But at least I'm doing something I really love to do, because that was the thought. That was the thought in my head. But of course, it doesn't always work out that way. And it's good that it didn't work out that way. There's so much more to do in life, but a very reckless kind of a situation.
Well, you know, it's really interesting to engage in something dangerous and to keep your head, which you did. You didn't run out of air, because I did scuba diving years ago and I was not a very good breather, and I'm very stressed. You're breathing a lot and you're using up a lot of your tank. So you were calm enough to do that and to hold your nerve and to surrender that, okay, if you're going to die, you're going to die, which is a really great place to arrive at. And then you see, you didn't, you know, you knew it was not a safe thing to do, but listened to this, you know, this guy was wrong. So it's like, you know, when you don't listen to yourself, but not listening to yourself took you into a place of challenge and surrender and coming through. So in a sense, either way was the right decision in some way.
Yeah.
Either not to go down because it was a stupid thing to do, or do it and go into a place of tapping into your own resilience, your own resources, your own water wisdom or diving wisdom or whatever it was. And to be able to, oh my God, sorry, I need to, sorry about this.
That's all right.
So apologies for that.
Don't worry. Not a problem.
So, I mean, it's a wonderful outcome. So well done. Gabriella says, humans are fascinating. On one hand, it must have been hard and unavoidable for the rescue boats. On the other hand, they overcame that and have interesting memories and sense of faith. Yeah. So,
So now I just snorkel. So we have a beautiful lagoon and reef here that is very accessible straight off the beach. You don't need to get in a boat to go anywhere. And even if it's rough outside of the reef, at low tide, the reef is a barrier to the waves. So you've got lovely flat snorkeling with lots of beautiful fish and beautiful coral. And so I can do that. I do that a lot of days after work, or before work. I can just go to the beach and go snorkeling and then go to work. And
the sea is warm.
The sea is cool. I wouldn't because living in the tropics, the sea is very warm, and so I've been used to warm water for a lot of my life, but it's certainly not warm, but it's not freezing. And so even in winter, I still jump in for 10 minutes sometimes. So yeah, I love that cold water, and that really cold water actually resets your vagus nerve, which fires your immune system. So, the cold water is really good. And people pay money to get in all sorts of cold baths these days just for that health benefit. So I'm lucky I can just go and jump in wherever. But the other thing I've taken up is golf, which sounds a bit weird, but I play golf and I love...
There's a golf course in Norfolk Island. Okay.
Yes, and I love my golf. But my favourite times of playing golf is at 6 o'clock in the morning. I get up, I grab my golf clubs, I go down and I've got the course basically to myself. There are a lot of people walking and dogs walking their dogs and things on the golf course, but it's such the beautiful alone space with the trees. And at one point there's the ocean. So when I get to that point, I do my daily practice of calling in the 4 directions. and people see me turn around in a circle, but I don't really care what they think. What is she doing? But anyway, even a few times I've been lucky enough to actually feel the earth breathe, and that's the closest thing I can come to saying. So it's just like the big intake and the big out breath of the earth just breathing, and it's so magical. So magical. Yeah. But I'm fitter.
Sorry, Gabriella says snorting golf would be fun. Hit a ball and go look for it underwater. Anyway.
Yeah. No, I'm fitter and health, like fitness wise, fitter than I've been in a long time, because I'm on this zone, and but just hitting that ball is beside the point. I'm there just to be out walking kind of thing. So, and I have a few special trees. There's a really, really old pine tree, and what did I say to him? Something about, oh, hello, grandfather. One day I said to him, and he said, "You're my sister." So there's a lot of male energy trees here, which is interesting. I've often come across a lot of female energy trees, but a lot of the trees here have a very strong male energy. And that's the other thing. You know how there's a group in Obod who are healing the land that has been kind of destroyed and looks really ugly, through mining or process or whatever, dumping waste or whatever. And here is a little bit the opposite. So the land looks beautiful. Everything looks absolutely pristine and beautiful. But there has been so much sorrow here with all of the convicts and the death. And so there's a lot of grief in the land. And so I work on that sometimes to try and free that grief from the land, as part of kind of connecting with my ancestor that was here.
Wow. And yes, and you know your own grief. So it's being able to empathize with the landscape is beautiful. What would you say has been your greatest achievement?
Well, probably getting a job at this age. I never expected, as being able to use my research skills that I did in finding all about my family history, and actually creating a job that fills that space. As I said, I walked into this research centre and thought, oh my God, this would be my dream job, and then got talking and found out that there was a job, and actually got the job. But then being able to tell story, like I was a primary school teacher, so I obviously used to happily get up and talk to the kids, and always. But then if someone said to me, "Oh, it's your turn," I would go, "Oh God, no, I'm not. I don't want to stand up in front of people and talk." Different in the classroom with kids, but say it like a gathering. All right, now it's your turn. Oh my God, I can't do that. Very self-conscious. And so being able to now in my work tell story, and then at the end people say, "Oh, thank you so much. You explained that so well, and you put that whole story of the mutiny on the Bounty, you put it into context and you made it real, and so that we could understand." So to me, to get to this age, to be working and not think that I would be working, and to be able to be telling story as a job is even though it's the same story over and over again. But anyway, I can add bits and pieces, and that I would love to tell other stories. I think, like you do, it's a great knack, a great achievement, and it's never ending really. So I'm as a kid, when I went to the library, the books I went right through first were all the myths and legends, the Greek myths and legends, the Roman, this, and so a lot of the more recently, I've been listening to this lady who's an astrologer, Pam Gregory. She's an English lady, and we're actually coming to a point on the Earth where the Earth hasn't been in relation to the planets for 12,000 years. And a lot of the outer planets are lining up with Earth. They take, you know, a long, long time to actually do their orbits. And a lot of them are, you know, they have mythical legends attached to them. Like one, Celestia, who was the wife of Neptune, and she was the goddess of the sea. And so I think, I can relate to that. That's me, you know, the goddess of the sea. And so I'd like to learn more about those outer planet myths and legends and then be able to retell them in some kind of a format.
Brilliant.
So
absolutely,
yeah,
there's nothing stopping you.
only to have that tangent and making time. It's not finding time, it's making time, to do those sorts of things. So
sounds like you're very busy. Gabrielle has a question. May I ask if there's grief in the water, under the water? You know, you're talking about grief on the land, on the island.
No, I believe the water is soothing and takes all that grief away. And I experienced it myself when my mother died. My partner then got a job. So I was married for 20 years. Then I had a partner for 15 years, and I've been by myself for 8 years. So the partner got a job in a place, again, right on the water's edge, but we got to stay in this beautiful resort before they found us a house. And so every day I would go out and snorkel on this little reef in front of this hotel and cry and cry and cry in the water. And the water just took it away, just dissolves everything. So that's the saving grace. There was a guy that Dave the Bard interviewed once for his, Droidcast. And I'm trying to think of his name. But it was on water, coastal magic and knots in coastal magic, I think he was talking about. And he was talking about once he went to his first ritual and he was in the wrong place. But they actually came back to the car park and found a man had killed himself in his car. And so then on their way home, they stopped by the sea and swam in the ocean. And it just dissolves all of that grief, all of that, if you swim with the intention. And so, you know, the leveler is the sea around this island of grief. It can't take it all away, but if you use it with intent when you enter it to heal some of that grief, if that answers the question.
Wow, that is lovely. It's just a lovely description of, you know, being able to cry into the water and it takes it away.
Yes, and with all support. It's like whatever, you know, the ocean was saying to me, whatever you give me, I can hold. What you just give me as much as you want to, and it will, you know, I will take it away. So
and the water holds you, you know, while you're in there, while you're in it, you're also being held yourself physically. Wow.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What are you grateful for?
Well, I'm grateful for lots of things, but I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be in, you know, to choose where I wanted to live at this stage of life, to just to think, okay, I'm grateful, you know, I don't really have money worries, even though I'm working now. I can be in the space where I need to go and
apologies.
Be in the space where I need, you're right, be in the space where I need to go and want to go. And for the fact that I can travel if I want to. But I'm also very grateful for my youngest son, and I have 2 granddaughters. So it's lovely that there is a future, you know, you can see the future through his children. And you know, a lot of people are a little bit optimistic about the future. Not optimistic. A lot of people are a little bit pessimistic about the future. But I'm really optimistic about the future. I think the world's capacity, even the oceans, to heal, and you know, we've come to a really bad space. I think we've come to a space that's a little bit, you know, at the end of the point.
Yeah.
But I'm very optimistic for the future. And a lot of the healing work that I've done over the years have been with Philip. and especially in the Private Magicians Club, that course I did with him in the Private Magicians Club. Wherever I go to, when I visit the club with Philip, my son is always there. I see him as clear as day. And he recently did, a few months back, he did a session in the Private Magicians Club where we actually went and might have seen someone from the future. And I actually saw my granddaughter with her daughter in the Private Magicians Club. So that, that's really, really special. So I have a lot to be grateful for, that I'm, I feel positive about the future, even though for some people, I know there's war and there's, oppression, and China's pretty, intent on ruling the world and whatever, but I still think we have to have hope. And with that hope and joined together, I feel very positive for the future. So maybe I'm a bit naive.
Where does that hope come from? What is giving you hope? What are you hanging that on?
Yep. Okay. So this astrologer, Pam Gregory, she talks about we're going to actually be coming to a place by 2024, a place that we haven't been in 12,000 years, like Lemuria was, where everybody gets on with everyone. There's not a top-down structure in society. And I don't know if it's going to be as close as that, but it's to do with where the planets are aligned. There's another guy I follow called Rory Duff. He's an Englishman. He calls himself a geobiologist. So he was a geologist who learnt to dowse. So he's very big in that lays and dowsing. And he's got groups forming all over the world where, it's like I've only been to one OBOD gathering, which was the one in New Zealand 4 years ago. But it's the power of the group with intent and ritual. And it, you don't, even online has that power as well, even because I'm by myself, I'm a soul. There's no one else here that is studying OBOD. But I just think we have to have the hope, and with the hope and do our practice for good, for raising the energy. But again, it's all to do with where the planets are aligned, and they say that top-down structures, big banks, big monies are all going to crumble, and that it's already starting with groups of people who are going to be in health hubs and food hubs, in their groups, in communities, and new forms of healing. I don't know. That's me. I'm a little bit left of centre or right of centre, if you want to call it.
I like to hear people say things like this, because it eases my own pessimism. A guest, Paul Tracy, I don't know if you listened to him a few weeks back, and he was talking about heart math, and he got us doing a breathing exercise. And the theory is either, if it's 1% of the world's population, if they do it at the same time, that we can bring everything together. And so that when people are in that place, what is it called? Heart convergence. I may have the language wrong. And I've been doing it ever since. And it's really, really powerful. And, it's breathing into your heart space and focusing on gratitude. And that if it's 1%, I think he said 1%.
Yeah.
Which seems like very, very little, but it has to be at the same time. Doing that, and I don't know, 10, 20 minutes, or maybe an hour, I don't know. That it brings us all into a place that we can't go back into, hating each other and all of that. So
and that's basically what these people are talking about. But it's even like, when we do the online rituals, you're connected to that group of people. Even these talks, you're connected to that group of people, and Tea with the Druid and all the others all around the world. And the solstices are the most powerful time to do that sort of work. And I don't know that one exactly, but it's based on a similar premise. And it's like with all that's going on, that's fear. And the opposite to that is love. So if you wake up in the morning and you say, today I choose love, not fear. Right. And so, when you choose love, you choose that, and the fear just fades away. So I think more of us have to choose the love every morning rather than fear, and focus on get out of that 3D kind of world and get a little bit higher on your perch and focus on the bigger picture and on, yeah. So that's sort of what I listen to when I'm going to sleep or in my spare moments, as well as the Druid stuff. So.
Oh, wonderful. Gabrielle says, in reference to your question, Eimear, I think hope comes from the inside, from a sense of love towards life and the world. Some people have it, others can grow it. That's so true. So we're coming to the end of our time. And my final question, 2 parts. What is your favorite season and what is your favorite festival at the Wheel of the Year?
Okay. And so when I first started Georgery, because I lived in the tropics for 38 years, the seasons are not nearly as marked as they are in the Northern Hemisphere or somewhere, further down in the Southern Hemisphere. And so the difference between winter and summer is the wet season or the dry season, not in the temperature or which wind is blowing. So I've found it really difficult to start with. And I used to just focus on the Wheel of the Year in the Northern Hemisphere and pretend I was in, the cool or the spring or the summer, But I'd probably have to say if there was a favourite season, it would be spring, because it's new growth, new life, hope, again. And flowers, because I love flowers. And so, I see spring. I know they happen all year round, but for many years I had to pretend that there was a spring. But, of course, but there's a very subtle change in the seasons. And so you have to, I think it makes your senses more honed, more aware, because you look for the subtle changes. It's not in your face. You're not going to, it's not going to be out there. So you have to really feel it or look for it. So, but I think if I had a favorite, it would be spring, just for those reasons. And yes. And what was the second part? What is the favorite?
Which festival on the Wheel of the Year?
I like them all for different reasons. But I think I like Samhain, which is kind of, but it's because that the other world is close and the veil is thin, and we can have that at any time of year. But I think because the focus is on the thinness of the veil and the, in Mexico, the Night of the Dead, when the spirits can walk, and all of that. I think that's probably my most meaningful time. Yeah. So.
Wonderful. Gabriella here is always betting what my guests will say, and I think this is the first time she's got it right. She said spring, Imolc and Samhain. So well done, Gabriella. You hit it tonight. So wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, okay. There you go.
So the first time ever in 2 years. That's wonderful. And certainly an historical moment in humanity. Yes, Gabriella. That is so funny. Listen, Joan, or Linda, sorry, no, Joan is your second name, because I've always known you as Linda Joan, because that's your email address. So it's been such a joy talking to you. Absolutely. And there have been lovely comments here. So I'll allow you to say goodbye. And
all right. Well, thank you, Eimear, for the opportunity to have that chat with you. And even when you first said to me last year or the year before, how about we do that chat? Maybe I'm a little bit nervous or whatever, but the timing was perfect, because I've actually wasn't nervous at all, and loved chatting with you. And so thank you for that opportunity to just talk about my life that hopefully might resonate with somebody else, and maybe I could be a mentor in some way for somebody else that hears this or whatever. So thank you for that opportunity, and thank you everyone for tuning in and for your lovely comments, and I'll make sure I have a read of them when we get off air. So
lots of lovely comments. So I will just send you back. I'll talk to you in a minute, so don't go anywhere, and I'll just say goodbye to everybody here. So thank you again for joining in, and lovely comments that you always contribute to these chats as well, which makes my work so much easier and also enjoyable just to hear, just to be able to read your comments. I wish you all, we're still in Imolc, mine takes a while. So we're going to have our online OBOD Imolc ceremony this Saturday at 7 p.m. UK time. I look forward to seeing you there if you can. And in the meantime, be well. And I look forward to introducing my guest next week for you. So until then, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, or if you're watching a recording of this. And also for those of you in the Southern Hemisphere, which is Joan, is have a happy Lunasa as well. So until then, slán go fóill.